Then comes the Palestinian National Authority, and that gets put into power by the Oslo Accords, which is Bill Clinton, shaking hands in the White House steps with Yasser Arafat, very famous. And pretty much what that did is it divided the West Bank up into 3 different legal categories. Here's West Bank, and it turned it into A, B, and C. So A is Ramallah, Hebron, maybe Nablus, and Jenin. And inside A, that's Palestinian sovereign territory. B was anything that had shared territory. So maybe like, these are all the B's. And anything that's not an A or B is a C. And so A is Palestinian sovereign territory. B is shared, shared between, usually it's like maybe Palestinian civil services, like the Palestinians are in charge of traffic violations and running the actual civil infrastructure, providing food and water, food banks, all that kind of stuff. The Israelis get to take care of all the military concerns and the court concerns of Area B, and C is all Israeli military courts, all Israeli military police, all that kind of stuff. But the interesting parts about A, you asked the question about where is it illegal to wave a Palestinian flag? The answer is actually everywhere, because Israel in their charter says that A, B, and C, that it doesn't matter the number, the letter, A, B, or C, as long as, if there's a threat to national security, we go in. That's also the same justification they've used in fighting Lebanon. There's a lot of dispossessed Palestinian people that are in Lebanon that are very upset. If it's a threat to national security, we don't really care where the border is, we go in and we attack it. The United States has also used a similar lack of legal reasoning in both the war on terror and previous administrations. It's not legal, it's against the law. But yeah, so they create these little legal entities, and it's a step-by-step plan. Eventually, Yasser Arafat and the PA, otherwise known as the Palestinian National Authority, you'll take over and you'll start to govern. But you have to do jump through all these hoops and meet all these requirements. They set it up to fail, and they set up with Israel having the sole authority of when you get to integrate into the next legal process. It never happens. It's really sad. So if you are graffitiing, if you write "Free Palestine" in graffiti, that gives the right of Israeli military soldiers or police to come in, grab you, arrest you, and put you in jail for lots and lots of time. International, the last little piece, the settlement thing, the wall thing, it's illegal. Geneva Article 4, specifically Article 49 of Geneva, it's illegal to place civilian populations within military occupied territory. Geneva is what we created after the Holocaust, and World War I with the use of mustard gas, Holocaust with the major threat to civilian life. These two events helped to canonize military law or military ethical law. Remember the Knights having their code of honor? Well, they instituted that into Geneva. All these different things, what you can and can't do when you occupy an area. You can't build permanent structures in there. You can't put civilians in there. Just about every single thing that's going on in the West Bank is against international law. The reason why nothing is happening is because for the majority of the reason why nothing's happening as far as international law goes is that the UN has a seat in the Security Council. So the U.S. has a seat in the UN Security Council. It's a special club within the UN, and they have like an extra veto power. So all the UN countries get together. They say, hey, what's happening in Gaza is wrong. Everyone votes yes, it is wrong, with the exception of all of our favorite friends like Saudi Arabia, North Korea, and the United States. And sometimes Chile, well, definitely Chile when Pinochet was involved. And we say, no, it's not a big thing. They say, you guys don't know, this is the general floor of the UN. They say, you don't know what you're talking about. We're going to pass this anyways. Well, there's a little special club called the UN Security Council, and since we have a seat, we veto everything. There's been 245-ish resolutions that have been passed by the UN to recognize the human rights abuses, the legal abuse, the abuse of military authority, the violations of international law. And U.S. says, hey, it doesn't matter, they're our pet country. Actually, not our closest ally in the Middle East. Our closest ally in the Middle East is by far Saudi Arabia. Maybe second, probably Israel. Third would be Jordan. So there goes the excuse that U.S. cannot get involved with an Arab or an Islamic country. Saudi Arabia being pretty brutal Islamic dictatorship, probably the greatest human rights violator in modern human history. they're also our closest U.S. ally in territory. I've done a lot of talking now. I can answer questions. We can also talk as a group about what's happening right now in Gaza. I'll say one thing on Gaza. No matter what you think is happening or how you feel about what is happening, one thing that I've seen in almost every news article from either AP or from the New York Times or whatever is that Gaza is completely blocked off. There's no more, everything, all the stories I'm telling of us fighting, because right here, there's a massive presence in Hebron. I can talk for hours on Hebron. Hebron's probably the darkest place in the entire world as far as the lack of humanity and just the brutality of settler violence. But there's a massive troop presence here. Massive troop presence here. Well, when they pulled out the settlements in the early 2000s, the troops left with them. So they just have this awesome wall, goes all the way around. The border between them and Egypt is blocked off. If a Palestinian over here decides to fire a gun, then Gaza does not get their electricity for that week. Israelis have total control over fuel, which runs generators for all of Gaza. Almost everything is on propane and generator power, and so they may just arbitrarily say, hey, this week no fuel. This next week no gas, propane gas. Next week after that no bread. Whatever the cost. Many Fulbright scholars that are citizens of Gaza don't get to go out on Fulbright. They don't get to go get their masters at Harvard. They don't get to travel anywhere. If you're Palestinian, you don't really have a passport. So if you're not a citizen, you don't have a country, so you can't go anywhere. How does that? I was talking earlier about Muhammad. Me and Muhammad were talking about going back together, and I'm sitting on a bus one day with this man, and he's like, you are obviously American, let's start talking. I was born in Palestine. When I was 14, I left. I went to Chicago. I made it rich. I opened a bunch of sandwich shops, and then I hear my mom's dying. He's 50 now. So I had to come back to Palestine to visit my mom. And the Israelis say, you know what, you are not going to go back home. Or you can go back home, but if you leave, you're never coming back into Israel. And your mom's dying, so you might as well stay here. So he says, kind of weird, but okay. So he sells his businesses, and he himself is in Palestine, nursing his mom with the best of healthcare that can be provided. And he has his daughters who are on one side, third generation, Irish Catholic, and he's Palestinian. Total U.S. passports. His daughters come to go visit him. They pick one of them out, sorority girl at somewhere in New York, Ithaca or something, I don't know. And they're like, you. And they pull her inside at Tel Aviv Airport, at Ben Gurion International Airport, which is right here. And you stay here. And so they put her in a jail cell in the bottom of Tel Aviv Airport for the duration of her flight. It was 14 days. And she said, no political affiliations, no campus clubs, no human rights writings, nothing. What was her crime? Her crime was having an Arab last name, or having Palestinian descent. It happens also to people with Egyptian descent. Anything. These are American citizens. She's born and raised in America, third generation on one side, and Israel has the right to do this. Well, that's very interesting. I used to work for Lois Cap, so I'm like, man, you should have called your congressperson, or you should have called the State Department. He's like, yeah, stupid kid. Of course, I thought about that. You know what they told me? They told me that they have a travel warning on the State Department's website that says, U.S. citizens of Arab descent with Arab last names not recommended to travel into Israel. And so he's like, okay, that's interesting that you have this warning, State Department, but what are you doing about it? And they're like, no, you don't understand, we have this warning on our website, and that's what we're doing about it. And so it's a very, so I'm not discouraging any Arab people of Arab descent to go there.